The year was 1995. School had just let out for the day, and I needed to get out of there as quick as possible so that I could jump on the city bus to head off to do a babysitting job. Often on these days, I would share the bus with one of my friends by the name of Case Hobson. We were there, sitting on the bus, having a little conversation between one another, and at that moment, an outspoken and attractive young girl from my school, whom I had never met before this moment, jumped into our conversation. Her name was Shannon McCain. At some point, she asked if either of us had girlfriends, and I really don't recall what Case said that day, but I told her, no, I was waiting for the right one.
And isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
After that moment, Shannon and I began a little bit of a friendship. But of course, with most friendships, it started out slowly. It began more as a simple acquaintance. We might see each other in the hallway and say hello, that sort of thing, in passing. Eventually, we started talking a little more in depth. We would exchange phone numbers, and I would remember writing in her yearbook saying to keep in touch with me over the summer if you're not too busy. Needless to say, for the most part of the summer, she didn't stay in contact with me. On the other hand, I didn't stay in contact with her either. We just sort of went our separate ways as people often do. And that summer, I had started dating another girl from Central whom I just happened to work with. That was a rather interesting relationship, to say the least. Our relationship was beginning to fall out of balance towards the end of the summer, and things began to come up that really started to make me feel very uncomfortable. And at some point near the end of that summer, Shannon and I had reconnected. I remember talking with her about some of the issues that I was having in that relationship. We would talk into the night as she would try to help me deal with those uncomfortable situations. One Saturday night, Shannon was over at Karen's house babysitting her two kids, Brittany and Jarrell. I recall going over there and playing with the kids. One of the things that really sticks out in my mind was I would lay a blanket down on the ground and I would take one of them and wrap them up in that blanket. I'd pick that blanket up with them inside of it and I would start swinging them back and forth, kind of like a hammock. Eventually, the kids went off to bed and I had a chance to sit down and chat with Shannon as she continued to be my sounding board in that struggling relationship. I remember very little about what was said that evening or even what was said in any of those conversations that we had concerning my girlfriend. But I do remember this from that specific night. As I was leaving, there at the doorway, I gave Shannon a little kiss, and then I hopped back into my car and headed back home. The next day, Sunday, September 15th, this began as a average Sunday. I'd wake up, go to church, come back home. Later, about mid-afternoon, I was sitting in the basement just watching some TV when the phone rang. The phone call, of course, was from my girlfriend. It seemed that she didn't want to continue in our relationship either, and she had taken that step to break up with me. Go figure. After all that time, I was trying to figure out how to break it off or even what to do. She had already been thinking the same thing. A sense of relief came over me, but also a sense of excitement. Later that night, I went back to church for the evening service, but when I got home, I couldn't get Shannon out of my mind. I called up a buddy of mine and I said, "Hey, Rob, you know where Shannon lives, right?" He told me where it was, but I really didn't know what he was talking about. So I asked if I could come pick him up and he could show me the way. So I drove down the street, I picked him up, and we headed over to her place. So the three of us hung out at her house for a couple of hours. There are a few things that I remember vividly about that night. First, I ate some delicious rhubarb cake with chocolate chips in it, as it was Shannon's dad's birthday. Secondly, we sat there and watched a movie that I still love to this day, titled Only the Strong. And third, Rob's smelly feet. I'm sure Roger remembers that too, as he closed the door to the room because he didn't want to smell Rob's feet anymore. I remember him making some kind of comment to the effect that he normally wouldn't close the door, leaving Shannon in there with two teenage boys, but He had made an exception because of the smell that was wafting out of the room. How did we endure that smell, you may ask? Well, we had each other, and that's really all that mattered in that moment. We sat there watching the movie, just holding hands. September 15th, 1996. Considering the situation, it may seem like an odd day for us to think about this as our first date. But each one of us, as we look back on that day, we have very fond memories of it, despite our friend's smelly feet. But we look back, and we officially call that day as the start of our relationship together as a couple. Well, that was the beginning of our story. We were high school sweethearts, and only about 6 months into our relationship, 1997, just before Shannon's 17th birthday, we had become engaged. I'd like to say that I really don't know what happened there, but looking back, we were so young, seemingly too young to be getting engaged, but we were so in love. I could only imagine what was going through my parents' minds when we had to tell them that we had become engaged. Only a few short weeks even after that, Shannon and I also accepted our call into the ministry. Things seemed to have just been moving so fast. In a couple of short years down the road after that, but a period of time that felt like an eternity. The summer of 1999 finally came around, June 5th, 1999 to be exact. It was on that date when Shannon and I were united in holy matrimony. And, of course, we lived happily ever after. Well, that would be the storybook ending anyways, but this is no storybook. This is real life. We had our struggles as a young couple. I had some things that I was dealing with on a personal level, especially after pushing God out of my life due to several factors that popped up. I began living a life that was unbecoming of a Christian. I started living a life that would not make my parents very proud. Sorry, Mom and Dad. I truly thank God for His protection over me through those years. But through it all, Shannon was there. She never gave up on me or her relationship with Christ. She was the glue that held our relationship, that held our family together. She stood firm as a rock while I was doing my own thing. I don't know where I would be today if God had not put us together. So, all of this to really just come around and say, Shannon, you truly are my best friend. I love you forever. Happy 23rd anniversary.
Met on the city bus, and you asked if I was taken. I told you that I was waiting for no one. A year of being friends until we started dating. After you helped me see our love for what it was, engaged by 17. So young but so in love. You've always been my everything. Share, there's no one above. Oh, I love you, sharing. In this family we live, all the growth that we've taken. When I was at my lowest, you're the glue in my run. While we bend to the top, we're my best friend. I love you forever. Remember that one night when you were babysitting, I'd come over and we'd talk into the night. You helped me realize there was something missing. We started kissing and began our new life. Our beautiful Nadia. and others are so perfect. I know our love will only grow. It's all been so worth it. Oh, I love you, sharing in this family we've made, all the growth that we've taken. When I was at my lowest, you're the glue in my heart, brought me back to the top. Oh, I love you, sharing in this family we've made, all the growth that we've taken. When I was at my lowest, you're the glue in my rock, brought me back to the top. You're my best friend, I love you forever. Wow. You're my best friend, I love you.